Good morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and just about anywhere else there are podcasts, you'll be able to find us. And if nowhere else, you can also go to our website, www.blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce perhaps the most positive person I know, and she is Marcy Gallagher, playwright and producer of the upcoming musical At the Cafe. And Marcy, you can wave to all your friends and fans who are watching this.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, and that is Marcy Gallagher. And I should mention that we say playwright and producer of At the Cafe, which we'll be talking about, but that only briefly begins to describe Marcy, because Marcy, you've had so many different careers and experiences in life. It's just incredible. And we'll start off, if we can, in terms of the question I asked. As a child, you grew up where?
Grew up in the Detroit area in Michigan.
Okay. And when you were growing up as a little girl in the Detroit area in Michigan, do you always know you wanted to be a playwright, producer?
It did not even cross my mind.
As a little girl, what do you want to be?
I wanted to be an English teacher.
Okay.
And then in college, I kind of switched majors many times to anthropology and then journalism, and finally a home environment or human environment and design. That's what I graduated with, Michigan State University.
And the most amazing thing about your career, I mean, there are a lot of amazing things about your career, but I think the very first job you got out of college was what?
I was a consumer consultant for the newly formed Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division in Charleston, West Virginia. And it was a fabulous job. And what was funny is that I made an appointment for an interview with the Attorney General. I got to his office and sat in the waiting room, and the hours ticked by. And finally, at 5 o'clock, everybody was getting ready to go home. And the receptionist said, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry that Attorney General Browning couldn't see you today." And I said, "Well, can I come back tomorrow?" And she said, "Sure." So I went the next day, same thing, all day long. 5 o'clock, everybody's going, "I'm so sorry, Marcy, but come back tomorrow. I'll make sure you get in tomorrow." So I came back the next day, and finally, he saw me, and I was so scared because here was an attorney general of a state. But I did the interview. I told him I want to protect consumers, and he said, "Thank you very much." And about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call that they offered me the job. And when I went in to sign the papers, that same receptionist said, "Marcy, honey, I have to tell you, there were 45 young people that applied for this job, and many of them, Chauncey Browning owed favors to their parents. So you were chosen out of all those people, even though, there were people that could have gotten the job in front of you." So I was really pleased with that. It showed that persistence pays.
Well, now that story you told, so the very first time you went in there, and this, knowing you, I've seen you do this several times, you just walked in off the street, or did you have an appointment?
I had an interview appointment.
Right. But he just wasn't taking you.
He got busy, I guess. And then the next day, the same thing happened. I kept saying, "Can I come back the next day?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, certainly, honey." So I just kept going back until I saw him. I was determined to see him.
Now, if you hadn't done that, you think that probably got you that job? Your persistence?
I think so.
Because knowing you, and we'll tell a couple other stories about you later on, but knowing you, that describes you to a T. If you want something, you're going to get it.
Go for it. Absolutely.
So talking about a great job for not only a woman graduating college, but just your very first job, but that seemed to be the perfect job for you to be doing. I mean, all your life. How do you fall upon it, or how do you decide you want to do that kind of work?
Well, actually, it just kind of came up as a job opening in the paper. And I thought, that sounds pretty cool. So, I mean, I had the degree in human environment and design, which, you know, may or may not have fit the description of what was needed for the job. But I think, you know, having the enthusiasm and the desire for the job really helped toward getting it and really articulating why I wanted it. You know, I wanted to help consumers. I wanted to make sure businesses treated consumers right and fairly and justly. So, and it ended up, I worked there for 8 years and ended up having a radio show, ended up giving speeches to civic groups and teachers, ended up doing a newspaper article. So for a first job out of school, it was absolutely amazing. I had so much fun.
So what happened then? Yeah, having fun in that job for 8 years. How come you left there?
I moved to Florida to be
Okay.
with my family.
Okay,
Yep.
that's a good reason. But that was probably not tough to be with your family, but that's probably a tough job to leave, was it?
It was. It was very tough because we started out with a very small budget, and then every year the legislature gave us more and more money. So we hired more and more people. We had a private investigator. We had 2 or 3 consumer consultants by the time I left, 2 or 3 secretaries, and then 2 attorneys. So it really grew as the years went by. But I did miss being with my family. So
Now,
I chose Florida.
when you went to Florida, did you seek similar kind of work there in consumer protection?
Well, I would have had to move to Tallahassee for that.
Okay.
So instead, I just got a job at a houseware store for the time being. Then I learned about the paralegal program in Atlanta, Georgia for 3 months, and you could get a paralegal certificate. And I thought, okay, that sounds like fun. So I applied for the school, and I went and I started working in Atlanta. And then again, you know, my family was, you need to be in Florida. So I went down to Florida and got a job with a great law firm and was there for 21 years.
Okay, as paralegal.
As a paralegal, yes.
Okay, I could see you doing that as well. Did you enjoy that work?
I loved it. I loved it. You know, it required great organizational and communication skills. And that was something that I really enjoyed doing. Plus we were in litigation, and being with the attorneys at the table in the courtroom was just fascinating. And being a part of the legal team that was representing our client was, you know, I mean, it was like the best job I could imagine.
Did you ever think you wanted to be an attorney?
I did at one time, but then the 3 years and the real huge expense discouraged me from it. And I thought, you know what? I'm doing a good job here. I'm part of the legal team. I'm just going to keep doing that.
Well, we should mention too, I don't know if it's a side benefit, but I understand Rumor Central that you also met somebody else as you were as you were doing this legal work. Was that kind of something else that happened?
Yes, I worked with this really smart, nice attorney named Tom Gallagher, starting in 1989. And I was assigned to work on his team. And so, you know, we were professional, you know, a legal team. But we got to know each other. We had great communication. And after, gosh, I don't know how many years, I got divorced and he got divorced, and we just kind of commiserated about it. And then we started going out and shooting pool and, you know, things like that. And our friendship developed into something more.
And to quote my cat's name, I guess one could say it was kismet.
It was kismet. It was kismet.
How cool was that? But then all of a sudden, so you're now in Florida for 21 years. What gave you the idea to then leave Florida to come to Asheville?
Yes. Well, that was breast cancer. I got breast cancer actually in 2004. I was diagnosed in October. Tom and I were married in June of that same year. So that was a big challenge for newlyweds. But after I went through all the chemo and the surgeries and everything, I said to Tom, we need to get out of Florida. And we had been coming up to North Carolina for vacations. And every time we would leave North Carolina, I would grab hold of a tree, would say, no, don't take me back there. I'm gonna stay. So we were like, okay, if we move to North Carolina, are we gonna go as an attorney and a paralegal? And I don't know what possessed us, but my sister at the time had owned a Kilwin's chocolate fudge and ice cream down in Fort Lauderdale. And we thought, well, that might be something fun to do. So we looked into it and we got the ball rolling. And that was in 2007. And so by the time the recession hit and the market tumbled, we were well on our way to opening a brand new business in Asheville, taking out a humongous business loan, not knowing anybody, and starting this business with no business experience except, as a paralegal, and Tom was a lawyer. And it was either sink or swim. And boy, we learned the dog paddle pretty quick. And then we started learning other, ways of keeping ourselves above water. So that was our next career.
And so you opened the Kilwins in Asheville. When did you open that?
April 2nd, 2008.
Okay, and you remember that year specifically.
Oh, yeah.
And we should also mention about your trip to Asheville, and very grateful you made that journey. But you also wound up bringing your folks with you as well. Is that?
Yes, we did. Yeah, my folks were 77 at the time. And when we told them we were moving to Asheville, they said, oh, we're going to miss you. And we said, no, you're going with us. And they said, oh, no, we're too old to move. We've been here for 30 some years. And so I said, well, we're committed to this thing, and we're going to be going. And 2 days later, they called us and they said, when do we pack? They were ready for an adventure at 77 years old.
Well, it's funny too, because it's almost the reverse of you, because you said earlier that they told you to come back home, so now you brought them with you.
Right.
Was your sister Bonnie with you then?
She was not, but she did have a home in Blowing Rock, or that area. And she also had a home in Florida. So she was up here part of the year, and about an hour and a half away from Asheville. So it was quite an adventure. And one of the very fortunate things that happened was that we met you and Cynthia. Indeed. Very early on. Well, and that was an interesting story.
It was interesting too, because we had met you through your parents, who met through, everything has a story behind it, through my cousin, who was good friends with your parents. Ruthie, if you're listening to this, Ruthie Citron, you'll hear your name mentioned. But yeah, that was so cool that we just walked in and into Kilwins, and we saw Dave and Judy. So Dave was working that day, you had him working. Yeah. And then they introduced us to you, and the rest is where we are today. Yes. So you were with Kilwins then, and that was quite a change. Because I'm listening to you, and I hear about your various backgrounds: consumer protection, paralegal. I know a little bit about Tom's background, and all of a sudden you're running an ice cream and fudge store. Yes. How was that transition?
Extremely frightening, very challenging, exciting. All those things. And, here we were doing this thing. And a year later, a fella in Black Mountain who owned a building there called us and said, I want you to open a Kilwins in my building. It was right downtown Black Mountain, great location. And we kept putting them off. We were saying, no, we've only been in business a year. Banks weren't loaning any money at that point. And he kept bugging us. And finally, we went to look at the location, and it was awesome. It was just awesome. So we contacted our bank. They said, how much do you need? And that got the ball rolling to open that store. So here we were a year into it, operating 2 of these stores. We were nuts. We were definitely nuts.
Well, the only good thing I think about running the 2, which you lost when you eventually sold the Black Mountain one, is
Right.
I guess you were probably in the best shape you were ever in, because you must have had roller skates then. You know, I'd speak to Marcy, where are you? And you'd be someplace between Asheville, Black Mountain, Fairview. You know, you were just really, you were kept busy during that time.
Yeah, too busy.
Yeah.
It was exhausting. It really was. But the experiences we had owning that store were just remarkable. I had opportunities that I probably would never have had.
And we'll talk
So
about this too, as I'm looking forward to seeing some of those in a next play from you, or 2 plays down the road. But let's talk a little bit about that. Before we even talk about your playwriting, which is a story unto itself, we should mention that there's a story behind that that also ties into how you got to Asheville, and talk a little bit about this. If memory serves me correctly, you won a contest?
yes, so many stories. Yeah, so Tom, when he was married at the time, he found out about a company called yournovel.com that offered personalized romance novels. So he thought he would get one for his wife and to try and spruce up their marriage and stuff. And it did not go over well. But sometime later, he got an email for them because he was on their email list, and they were having a writing contest for their romance novels. And he forwarded it to me because he knew I, dabbled in writing. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. Anyway, long story short, I entered, I won. The prize was a trip to Asheville. And so it's interesting how one thing leads to another. And it just, being in Asheville was just so amazing. And I loved it, and the trees and the mountains. I felt like home here. And so that's how, one of the ways we got here.
We should mention, if you will, or give a shout out to the people involved with it's yournovel.com.
Yournovel.com.
Yeah. And just, by the way, if I
yeah.
can just mention, if somebody's looking for one of the great gifts of all time, you should check out this website, especially Marcy's story. And somehow you got Tom writing a story as well. But talk about, if people go to that website, what will they see?
Well, there's going to be probably 20 plus titles on the website. And what it is there's a questionnaire that you fill out on the website, giving about 21 characteristics of the couple: hair color, eye color, best friends, car he drives, nearest airport, perfume she wears, all these characteristics, and those are woven into the story. So as a writer, we write the story, and then the Kathy and Fletcher, who own the company, then have a program that melds the information from the 21 characteristics into the story. So the story becomes about you and Cynthia, and all the things. But they're not great literature. They're just fun books, and usually great locations. And they're just, my titles are Treasure Seekers, Heart of the Keys, Rome, Diamonds, Danger and Desire, Seasons Greeting, Seasons Love. And then Tom's title is Wild West Love Fest.
And when I read Tom's, so I read, I think, all the books. So I think we ordered 3 of them, and they're just so much fun. Again, it's in February, so you're looking for a birthday gift, an anniversary
Valentine's gift.
Valentine's Day. If you can, it's one of the great gifts of all time. And we should mention that people also have a choice of 2 different kinds of the book.
Yes.
Explain that, if you would.
Well, there's a mild version, which is kissing and hugging. And then there's the wild version. Now, we write the wild version. And that has, a little bit further beyond kissing and hugging. But it's they're fun books, though. They really are, because the couple is always involved in some caper of some sort.
And I can send Marcy the books you wrote, and they involve travel and spectacular spots. How did you get Tom to think of one involving the Wild West? It was so clever. It was just great. How did he come up with the idea for that?
I think he just came up with it by himself. He wanted to write a Western
Yeah.
and get the couple involved in this Western. And it involves some time travel and some really funny characters. And interestingly enough, he wrote that while he was recovering from brain surgery.
And he did it in such a short time. It was just
yes, a few months.
So cool. So anyway, before we get off that, just novel.com, looking for Valentine's Day, birthday, anniversary, next Christmas, one of the great gifts. And make sure you look for Gallagher's name. No, excuse me, they can't.
Actually,
Right. What do they have to look for?
Marcy Thomas.
Marcy Thomas and Thomas.
Thomas Marcy.
Thomas Marcy. Okay. But you're in for a treat if you get that. But so that's another great story of Marcy. Marcy, the more I get to know you, there are like so many of these great stories. But I think you've topped it with your latest adventure. And we have to talk a little bit about that. That all of a sudden, Marcy's telling me, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or something, or whatever it was,
yeah,
wrote a play. I said, Marcy, what did you do that for? How do you get the idea, first of all, to write a play?
Well, it's actually a musical.
Right.
And Tom and I had gone out to see Greatest Showman, which is a musical, which is, I mean, I absolutely loved it.
Right.
And the next morning I got up and I said to Tom, I would love to write a musical. And he's like, okay, sweetie, you write yourself a musical, you
right.
know? And I sat down at the computer and I don't know where it came from. It's just my brain sent signals to my hands and I just started clicking on the keyboard and it came to life. And I, you know, I did think about what I wanted it to be about and about the characters. But I had writing experience, but certainly not a musical. And I wrote the lyrics to 14 songs and it just kind of, I don't know, came out of nowhere.
As we talk about this show, I'm shaking my head too, because I still can't believe this, you know. First of all, and I love you, Marcy, but you're a person until recently had not seen lots and lots of shows. You know, you'd seen some, but you were not a real big theater goer. And to not just do a play, but a play with music and to 14 songs. I'll ask you to explain how you were able to do it, but how you conceptualize them without even the music. What possessed you to do that?
You know, I wish I could explain it, Blaine. I really wish I could explain it. When I was a child, I mean, we're talking 6, 8, 10 years old, I wrote poetry and very simple poems and stuff, but I don't know. And then throughout the years, I would write poetry like for my parents' anniversaries. I would write them a poem.
I remember that, right? Yeah.
For their anniversaries. So there was something strange in the mind here about maybe some lyrics for a song. And some of them I had the melodies in my head, but I don't know music. I don't know the first thing about music. I love listening to music. I can't sing worth anything, but the lyrics came out of the characters, actually, about where they were in their lives and what was happening with them. And so the lyrics came actually from the characters.
And before we talk anything further about this, if I can ask you kind of maybe give the Reader's Digest version of the show. So we already had and by the way, that was kind of interesting. You had the name of the show pretty early in the process at the cafe?
No.
Where'd that come?
That actually came from, I was working with a very talented, wonderful woman who you know well, Ellen Pappas. And we started working on, you know, she was giving me very valuable suggestions. And she kind of came up with the idea of that. And I just tweaked it a little bit. But since many of the scenes are at a cafe And the cafe is actually a character, because the characters in the play meet there to talk about what's happening in their lives. So it was natural that the cafe became part of the title.
Okay. And we should mention to anybody watching this or listening to this that they should stay tuned, because somewhere along the line, we're going to ask people to conceivably share their ideas for a possible name of the cafe. We haven't decided on that yet, right?
Right.
But it's a possibility. You
Yeah.
know, if you want to name the cafe after your mother or wife or spouse, significant other, stay tuned, because Marcy will tell you down the road a little bit about how you have opportunity to give an actual name to the cafe. So you write the play, you have a name for it, and then because COVID, other reasons,
Yes.
they dormant for a couple of years.
Yep.
Then all of a sudden, and we should give another shout out that we have this great play, and we know it's so good, but there's just one thing missing, and that is
The music.
right. Yeah, play was great. I had seen it. The song sounded good to me, but I hadn't, they meant nothing to me. But all of a sudden, you needed music. So explain what happened on that.
Well, and Blaine, I have to give you a lot of credit for many of the contacts that I was able to make to put this thing together. So major shout out to Blaine Greenfield, because as many of you know, Blaine does attend a lot of theater and knows a lot of people in the theater community and the music community. So Blaine invited us to go with them to see a group called Duo, and they were playing at ISIS, and we went with a big group of people, and I'm sitting there, and the woman who was part of the duo with Mark, her name is Sarah Kors, and she was playing many of her own songs as well as doing covers. Her voice was unbelievable, and her songs were so good. So after the show, I went up to you, Blaine, and I said, do you think Sarah would be interested in writing the music to my lyrics? And you were like, oh yeah, I know she would. I don't know how you knew that, but what you did was you connected us by email, which was awesome, and I can't thank you enough for that. Sarah and I met. I gave her a copy of the script, and I said, just look it over, see what you think. And she said, well, I've never written for somebody else's lyrics. And I said, oh, I know you can do it. I mean, I never wrote a musical before. So anyway, 2 weeks later, she calls me and she said, so we met at a cafe, a coffee house. And 2 weeks later, she said, can we meet again? And I said, sure. And she brought along headphones and her computer. And she said, I want you to listen to something. She had written 2 of the songs already. And I was blown away at how just amazingly beautiful these songs were and how she gave life to these lyrics. And I said, Sarah, this is absolutely amazing. And I said, are you sure you want to keep going with this? She says, oh yeah, I'm having fun. And so within 2.5 months, she had written all the music, which just gives you an idea of this young woman's extreme talent, which is so cool.
And I still am shaking my head thinking about it, because it's just, I still can't believe how the two of you were simpatico and on the same wavelength, that you write the words. She didn't know the words, but she don't do the music. And almost everyone is better than the next one. You just listen to it, and people get a chance to. Next time we have you on the show in a couple months, we'll give some snippets of the music. But the music, what I love about it, Marcy, compliment to both you and Sarah, is it's so diversified. It's not just like one type theme. They're all different ones.
They're all different.
They all fit into the play. And what I'm so impressed with, probably you are too, this fantastic cast you put together. They all so love, it says it almost chose the cast based on music or vice versa, but they're almost like perfect for each of the people in the cast. And let's talk about even that process, which is so cool. Here's Marcy Gallagher. I'd seen some plays, saw a movie with Hugh Jackman. even though Hugh wasn't with you, you were with Tom, I assume, but Hugh
Yes.
was in the movie. But you see this movie, and all of a sudden, not only are you writing a play, you're getting the music for it, you also start casting it left and right. Where did that skill come from?
I think it was the perseverance. And what each of the actors said to me when I met with them personally was, you're so enthusiastic about this. This is just like infectious. And I'm like, yeah, because I really think we have something here. And I would give each one a copy of the script. And again, I'd say, if it's not something for you, let me know. And also I would play for them what their particular solos would be. And they loved it. And so with your help in terms of connecting me with people, and then I got connected with other people by some of the actors. And also, we should mention that you also invited us to go see a play at the Wortham Center named Shirley Valentine. And after the show, which by the way was fabulous, and again, I have to thank you for inviting us. Madison Brightwell was Shirley Valentine, extremely talented, unbelievable, the right age group for the musical, and also the director, Janice Bertucci-Schreiber. We met them afterwards, and I told them about, and you mentioned, Marcy wrote a musical, and pretty much they both signed on right then and there. So,
well,
I mean,
and I just knew, when I had met them, I'd known them for a while, but they're the same thing too. One of the keys you just mentioned was they're both enthusiastic. And I think as a credit to you, I think that's one of the keys to the success so far of the venture, that you can't be in it unless you're enthusiastic, And
yes.
so let's talk a little bit about then the team you put together. And again, you've done this within a month or so, just amazingly. And we've had a couple people, said yes. I mean, everybody almost said yes automatically. Then they had to back out for various kinds of reasons. But if we can just talk a little bit about some of the people you put together for this project. We'll start off, I guess, with just the actors. You have, I think, 6 actors in this.
Yes, there's 6 characters. Yeah. And so Erin Covington-Yao is going to be one of the characters named Sandra. I have not seen her in a show, but I know you have, and other people.
She's the best. Yeah.
And, again, your recommendations were spot on. Madison Brightwell, who I met playing Shirley Valentine, she's in it, playing a character named Nancy. And then Roberta Whiteside is an incredibly talented person. I haven't seen her again, but other people have. And so she's playing Lorraine. Lily Bartleson. And where did we get Lily? It might have been
Janice. She had directed Janice.
Janice knew her.
Janice had directed her. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so I contacted her, and I hadn't even met her. This was just over the phone. Sent her a copy of the script and told her the role would be of the server. And she was in. And then I got the name of Jonah Walton from Madison, who had worked with him. And I called him, met with him, gave him the script, same kind of deal, meeting, talking about it, giving the script, having them take it home, listening to the songs, and, let me know. And all these people said, yes, yes, yes. And it was just amazing. And also CJ Breland.
I was going to say, yeah.
Who you recommended. And I called her and told her what it was about, sent her the script. She said yes. And I had not met her either. So they were putting their faith in me as I was putting my faith in them. But that faith was backed up by you and others who would tell me how really incredible these people were.
By the way, the question I get asked, and I assume you're going to be asked this as well. So the 4 main characters, and the 2 are important to the play as well. Do you know these women, or are they based on people in your past?
Actually, they're not, interestingly, but they were people that ended up, the characters ended up having these personal problems in addition to facing middle age and all the wonderful things that happen in middle age. But they each had their own personal challenge. And what I thought about in creating the characters was, okay, who's going through what challenge and why and how? And so that's how the characters developed. And then again, the songs kind of really tell who the characters are and tell where they are in their lives. So the songs guide the story along and introduce the audience to these characters. And through the songs, they learn about a lot about the characters and what they're going through.
And what's so exciting about the songs and the people you've chosen to sing them is that everybody who is in it just loves it, you know, and what's so incredible, Marcy, a lot of them say they see a lot of themselves in the character they're playing. You know, it's almost
Yes.
like it just, I don't know how it worked out, but just incredible. But the one other part of the story, which I think is so unbelievable about this story, is how you then got to find a place to have the play. And I should just mention this, that Marcy and I have been talking, we're looking at different places, different options I'm mentioning here and there. And Marcy just on her own did what?
Well, I thought about the places that I would really like to, the places that I've been to. Actually, I hadn't been to the Diana Wortham Small Theater, but I had been to shows at the Masonic Temple. They have an incredible stage and a lovely seating area. And so I went, I just called and actually I found the email address, got in touch email, called, then talked to them and got, you know, to go there and see the theater. At that one I went with Cappy,
Right.
who I should mention, Cappy
Right.
Tassetti, who is going to be our stage manager. And we were both very impressed with that theater. It is beautiful. And then I decided to contact, somebody mentioned that there was this Tina McGuire Theater at the Diana Wortham Center. And so I found the email address of Steve Hunt, who oversees all the productions and stuff. And I emailed him. I said, can I come and see the theater? And he said, sure. I went there. And then, you know, I had to evaluate between the two. I also contacted NC Stage. And because of the timing of when I wanted to have this thing, they said, we just don't have the right timing, but we might be interested. Anyway, so when I went to Tina McGuire, it was just so perfect. And I asked Steve, you know, do you have such and such a date available? And he did. And I went home and I talked with my wonderful husband and co-producer, as well as Blaine's a producer. And he said, go for it. So I signed a contract with them and got you, Blaine, and Cappy and Janice over there. He was kind enough to let us in to see it. I took measurements. You guys got to see the layout. So it's interesting how everything just kind of fell into place.
And another story, by the way, classic story, persistence. When Marcy called me up that day, you know, we're still talking about where she's going to be. We were in local schools, you know, all sorts of possibilities. And Marcy says, Diana Wortham. I'm saying to myself, she never did a play in her life. You know, this is the very first time. She walks into Diana Wortham and she comes back that day with a contract. You know, it's just, you laugh about it, but everything, you know, relates back to that story of your consumer protection days. You know, you waited in a lobby, knowing you would have found someplace, you know, you were not going to leave until you had a place. And what's so cool about this is let's talk a little bit about when this is all happening. So even though we're now in February, this show is not going to be on until when?
August 18th, 19th, and 20th. And then it was, I think you and Janice who said, we need to do a second weekend.
Right.
And so I contacted Steve. I said, do you have the following weekend available? He says, yeah. So I said, let's book it. And so it's August 25th, 26th, and 27th. So it's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday and Saturday are at 7 p.m. and Sunday is a 2 p.m. matinee on those 2 weekends.
And we should mention, though, even though it's far off in advance, Marcy and team are already working on this very diligently. But in addition, that I think by the time this show is aired, people are going to be able to go to a website, first of all, to find out more about the show. What's the website?
The website is worthamarts.org. It's WORTHAMARTS.org. And it brings you to the main page, and it has some events, and you scroll down, and then it says see more events, and you click on that, and then we're on page 3. And I will tell you that it went live today. And I mean, I was jumping up and down.
We should be.
Oh my God, this is on the Wortham website.
And it's happening,
And it's happening.
By the way, we're on page 3 now, but when we get closer to the show, it'll be on page 1. But more
Right.
importantly, I can't wait to see it. I asked you today about this, that people, when they drive by Biltmore Avenue and past the Wortham Theater, they'll see about a month before the show, right? They'll start seeing at the cafe.
I'm not sure if it's a month. It might be a week or 2.
Okay, but they'll see,
It's on the marquee.
can you imagine? They'll see it on the marquee. And when you mentioned, Marcy, we just mentioned that website, but that's, and people, and they can order tickets if they want in advance. They'll definitely be guaranteed a seat then. But in addition, I understand there are going to be other ways people can find out more. They can also go creating a Facebook page, and it'll be at the cafe. That'll be live within a couple of days.
Okay, great. Yep.
Also, if somebody wants to get in touch with you specifically, and we'll talk about why would you want to get in touch with Marcy? Well, you might want to get in touch with her for her incredible story, to tell it. If you have a newspaper magazine you want to write about the incredible Marcy Gallagher, you can do so. But I'll segue into a final thing in a second. But how do people reach you, Marcy, if they just want to reach you directly?
Best thing is by email, and it's marcygallagher222@gmail.com, and I can spell it for you.
Okay.
MarcyGallagher222@gmail.com.
I'm really glad you clarified that, by the way, though, because does that differentiate you between Marcy Gallagher 221 and 223?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
There's only 1 222.
Okay, so that's Marcy Gallagher, but you can reach Marcy Gallagher that way as well. And let me ask you too, the incredible thing, as we're finishing this, and you just have to meet Marcy, and you will, and get to know her. But I understand that already in the back of our mind, you don't have to tell me anything about it, but we have a second play working on.
I'm not working on it now, but I have it in my head.
Okay, you have a second
And
play.
this is going to be my new career.
Okay, a playwright.
Is a playwright. Yep.
Okay, but
Musical
just think,
theater writer.
so you mean we'll retire you from being a romance novelist? We'll retire you from being a poet, an ice cream maker. You know, think of it.
Paralegal.
You're
consumer
paralegal.
protector.
But is that incredible? Anyway, Marcy Gallagher, you are the most amazing person I know. And this is just at the cafe. You can see the sign in the background, so you remember it. But this is going to have, you'll have to see this to believe it. And again, you have to keep in mind, women had never written a play before, never written a musical before, had seen maybe 7 shows in her life, whatever the case is. And he came up with this idea, just has me waiting to see what the next one is going to be, you know, or the next one after that. But you think that's what you want to do? You want to write plays?
Yeah. And really the whole thing about this is that in retirement, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for men and women to explore things that they may have wanted to do, even from childhood or just out of the blue, and just go for it. It's like, you know, you have this opportunity in retirement to really explore what your creative aspects are. You may want to take classes, you may want to become a potter, a painter, whatever, but it's like, don't let anything hold you back. Don't let anyone tell you you can't do this or you can't do that, or you're too old, or, you know, whatever. I mean, just just go for it and have fun. That's the main thing.
But excepting I hate to disagree with you respectfully, but you're about the least retired person I've ever met, you know. And you call Marcy, and when I speak to her, she's on her way here, she's on her way there to a meeting. I have to ask you to give a shout out to two other people or organizations,
Yes.
if we can. One is, we also mentioned, I forgot to mention so far, we also have a tremendous person who's
Yes.
going to be our keyboardist, and that is who?
Yes, Dave Bates. And he has played around town a lot with his music, and he has written music. He leads choral groups. He is an extremely talented, wonderful, wonderful person. And so he's going to be, we're going to have one piano, and he's it. And I'm very excited that he's on board with this.
And again,
And
I give you so much credit on that, because I think I told you off the air, I just love live music as opposed to tracks, you know, and we could have gone with a track, but just to have Dave as a live, you know, pianist is just fantastic.
yes,
And one last shout out we'll give too, in your spare time, aside from doing everything else you're doing, you're also active in another group in the area, and that's the secular, what's the name of the secular
Jewish
group?
Secular Community of Asheville, JSCA. And it's a wonderful group. We've got about 100 members, and I'm on the board of directors and the ritual committee. And we have First Friday services. It's just, you know, another thing that retirement has given me is another opportunity to become involved in something.
And lastly, how could I forget? We should give a shout out to one other thing that retirement has given you the opportunity to be part of. And that's, aside from being husband of Thomas Gallagher, you're also the dog mommy of the amazing, you want to give a shout out to him?
Yes,
Scout.
Scout.
And
Yeah, and I have to tell you, my husband Tom has been so incredible throughout this whole thing. He's been encouraging, he's been promoting, I mean, just everything. He's like the best, and he's given me great ideas, and he's become involved with it. So I really am just so grateful that my husband is supportive of this crazy venture.
And we should mention too, in terms of supportive, he also, we might even get to hear him in the show as well off screen. Tom's a very talented voiceover artist, and we'll get to hear his voice in the play as well.
Yes, you will.
Okay.
And people who are interested in maybe doing a being a volunteer through being a stage hand or ushers, or we also need some people, extras, to be on the stage at certain times. So there are opportunities to become involved and just have some fun. And Marcy Gallagher 222@gmail.com.
Okay, Marcy, it's always a pleasure speaking to you. We're going to sign off now, and hopefully stay with us if we go off the air, but I look forward to seeing the show in dates
August.
again.
August 18th, 19th, and 20th, 25th, 26th, 27th. And thank you so much, Blaine, for everything that you've done to get this off the ground.
Likewise. I'll speak to you soon, Marcy. You be well.
Okay, thank you. You too.